Hey, beautiful people, once again, it is such a heartfelt pleasure to have your company. So here we are on the 3rd of April, and I have this really beautiful, not only beautiful, but I also feel a very profound and powerful medicine story. A medicine story for this time, a medicine story for the times that we are living in, and a medicine story for this spring. At the heart of this medicine story we find Freya, Freya the goddess, and rooted deeply into that story is the wisdom and the, I almost like want to say teachings, but as I will often say, or the innate often says, that it is beyond teachings, it is deeply rooted into remembrance. So there's these threads of wisdom that are percolating within this story that are really deeply rooted into death and rebirth. And if we just kind of take a moment and we kind of lean into that for a moment or two, here we are at the beginning of springtime. And what really feels to be, without a shadow of a doubt, if we kind of lean back into our ancient knowledge and wisdom, is the beginning of a whole new cycle in time, nature's new year. It's not just nature's new year, it is our original dream, you know, that is very much anchored and rooted into the land herself. And if that is the case, without a doubt it is, but if that is the case, then our also real new year is in harmony with the land itself. And of course the land is birthing, it is reawakening. And here's the thing that I really feel, and I'm seeing it in so many people, many people I know, and many people I am really honoured and gifted to work in, that there is this almost this awakening, reawakening, and this deep remembrance of who they have been. It's almost as if those medicine pieces are returning. And I don't feel for one moment that that is by chance. I do not feel that that is some random event. I don't feel that it's like, you know, something that's just happening. This is happening by design, because the more that we remember who we really truly are, who we have been, who we've always been, the more that we can caretake each other, and more that we can caretake this land underneath our feet, and the more we can reclaim our sovereignty from the distortion and the inversion that we all find ourselves in. You know, nobody is escaping that, you know, and in a way it's like a bit like, you know, diamonds are produced under pressure. Okay, so in a way these times are kind of running parallel. There's so much that is happening within them, but we've got this collective squeeze that is happening, that in a way the upside of that, because there is, you know, if this is designed at some level to kind of break us, you know, it's like two things happen: either we rise up or we absolutely kind of, you know, get flattened. And I really do feel that a bit like some of what we're seeing going on in the world as well, is that instead of being flattened, there is this grit, there is this resilience. You know, humanity has, you know, deeply wired into it this grit and this backbone in there. And actually what it's doing is, you know, kind of invoking, triggering, activating this sense of grit and resilience and backbone. And I feel that within that You know, there is this awakening that's happening individually and collectively, and we are remembering that we are medicine people, that we come from a deep, deep lineage, a deep indigenous lineage and roots that go back. You know, someone said to me, you know, and I've shared this before, but someone said to me once, you know, a lady said to me once, you know, so when did you learn this? And at what age were you when you learned this? And I can remember feeling spirit kind of laugh, and then my awareness, you know, was this, hold on a minute, you know, that's a ridiculous notion to think that you just learn this in this lifetime. It is a really, for me, it's a ridiculous notion to think that you learn this just within one lifetime, in this lifetime. And the thing is, it isn't learned. It is a part of who you are, and it's the part of what you've been many, many lifetimes. Okay, so I really do feel that there is this kind of stirring that people are having experiences and memories move through them and flow through them that seem like they're way beyond this time. You know, I kind of look at the pathway I walk now with the mediumship. I see that really it's kind of beyond that. It's more like seership. It's seeing into the unseen, and that works in so many different ways, from like seeing the truth of a situation to seeing those loved ones that have passed, to seeing into, you know, the land and all that's unseen there, to holding ceremonies, rites and rituals, to really taking people into a place of really remembering who they are and what maybe is most important. And it is rooted and anchored into remembrance. It is the long road home. The long road home to self, to the land and community, to kin, to clan and tribe. And I don't say any of that lightly. Now, I know that plays out in my world, and I also really deeply, deeply feel and know that it isn't just something that has come about within this lifetime. You know, this on my hand isn't just acquired this lifetime. To me, that was like an initiation. It was like a rite of passage. But that rite of passage and initiation is an initiation once again. It's something that has happened before. And I don't say any of that lightly. So, here's the medicine story. And I really do feel it is deeply rooted into death and rebirth. And I really do feel that this springtime, that we collectively are going through a rebirth, okay, a reawakening, and it's also one of sovereignty. So, as I said, at the heart of it is Freya. Now, picture this if you will, picture this if you can gently take a moment and feel into the imagery within the story also. So just feel into the goddess Freya. You know, when I say those words to you, how does she begin to appear to you? How do you begin to see her? What comes to mind? What do you feel about her? What she holds within her personality, within her energy, within her form? What is it that you feel emanates from her? So the goddess Freya. So, in many ways, Freya is, within my experience, she is a protector of the people. She's a protector of the clan. She's a protector of the tribe. She's also a healer. she's a warrior, and picture this, that she wanders off the battlefield. She wanders off the battlefield, and it's been a huge battle, really, really, really deep battle, and she wanders off this battlefield slightly concussed, very, very disorientated, and she wanders off that battlefield disorientated and ends up wandering into the forest. And after a while, in her disorientated and confused state, she wanders deeper and deeper and deeper into the forest until she becomes very lost. She becomes very, very lost and really disorientated and cannot find her way back. And then also she's very weak, you know, from the battle, and she's got many wounds, and she ends up collapsing beside a waterfall. And not long after she collapsed, she was found by an old woman, a woman of the forest, a healer, a sage, a wise woman. And take a moment and see if you can picture her also. Just take a moment and, you know, how she dressed, what is she carrying. You know, for me, she's carrying this bag over her shoulder, and in that bag is herbs and roots and potions. I also feel a hunting knife with her. This is a lady that knows the land very, very well, and also feel that there's mushrooms in her bag as well. And this is a lady that knows the woodland, her woodland, very, very well, and she lives in partnership with that land, with that forest, and she lives in partnership with the spirits that dwell there, the land wights too, and they've taught her so much about their wisdom and so much about their medicine and the medicine plants that dwell within that forest. And she has a sled of salts with her, and she very gently and very lovingly places Freya onto this sled, and she wraps her up with blankets and just gently, for a moment or two, strokes her brow. And Freya, in her slightly concussed state, begins to frown, and the old lady whispers to her in an unknown language, but in a way those words are felt. They are a prayer of ease, a prayer of soothing, a prayer of strength. The old lady, she pulls Freya even deeper into the forest to her very humble dwelling, and there's this dwelling, and there smoke coming from the chimney. See if you can picture that dwelling also. It's kind of wooden with like a type of thatch. There's like moss on the roof, but the smoke just coming from up in the rafters like a chimney of sorts. And there's a feeling of warmth as you approach this dwelling, and as she approaches, she very gently pulls Freya off the sled, carries her very, very tenderly but very gently into the dwelling, and she lays her down beside the hearth, beside the fire, and she begins to attend to her wounds, and she cleans her wounds and puts herbal poultices on the wounds, and she then feeds her some water and very gently a little broth. And she does this each and every day. She cleans and tends to the wounds, and once the wounds are clear and clean, she begins to stitch what is needed and set some of the bones in the hand as well. And each and every day she tends to her wounds, and the days move into weeks, and Freya's moving between this life and the other world, this life and the other side, this life and the afterlife. She moves between those two places in the days and weeks to come. And then there's a settling. There's a huge settling in Freya, and the light begins to grow back around her, and now weeks have turned into months, and she begins to return from the dreaming, return from being in a very liminal place between death and life, and she begins to return and settle back here and this side of life. And after what felt like months and months, she begins to awaken, still weak, but her strength is building. The strength is returning, the light is returning within her. She begins to start to fill back up. She's able to drink more, she's able to eat more broth, she's able to sit up. And then as the days went by, she's sitting up more and more, and she's beginning to move around the dwelling, and she's even been able to sit in the doorway and take in the spring sunlight. And she's filling up even more and even more, even more. And then after many days of doing this, she's able to help the old lady skin rabbits at the table outside the dwelling. But each night she goes back to bed feeling a little tired. But each day she's moving a little bit more, and she's moving a little bit faster. And one particular evening, they're sitting round the fire. Freya shares her deep gratitude to the old lady and asks her a little bit more about what had happened to her. What had happened, what had brought her there. And the old lady smiles and said, well, the fates have brought you here. The fates, without a shadow of a doubt, have brought you here. And we've tended you, and we've nurtured and nourished you back to health. And the old lady could see that Freya was ready, but Freya would never be the same. And the old lady grabbed Freya's braids, and with her knife gently cut one and cut the other, and then grabbed all of them in her hands and cast them into the fire. Now you can imagine, for a warrior, a shield maiden such as Freya, her braids were a symbol of warriorship. They were a symbol of authority. They were a symbol of the incredible warrior and woman that she was. But the old lady simply says to her, what was, and what is. Meaning that she was now someone else. What was she? What she had gone through was a death and a powerful rebirth. And as she moved through that experience, she was alchemized, she was transformed. Freya, at first shocked, and then almost for a split second feeling rage. and then there was a grace and a peace. And then within that moment, Freya's hair, beautiful blonde, went from beautiful blonde to white. Freya had been alchemized. She had gone from the Shield Maiden into the Elder. And a few days later, she said goodbye to the old wise woman, the woman of the forest. She said goodbye to her and knew that the fates, the weird WYRD, which is the wisdom and knowledge, the light that runs through all things, was calling her. The fates were calling her to return to her people, and she did. And she carried a slight limp from that day onwards to the end of time. And Freya returned to her people different. She wasn't quite ever the same person. There was a grace in her. There was a rebirth that had taken place that had left her with a deep, 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 deep sense of peace. And it was a sense as if from that day on she had put down her shield and her sword, and she returned and she lived on the edge of her community, of her tribe, of her clan, on a piece of land. And there was this want, there was this deep, deep need in her to farm the land. She no longer wanted to fight. It was as if there was something within her that had also made peace with herself. As if she placed down that shield and placed down that sword, her braids were cut, there was this death that had happened. And of course she had been lingering between those two worlds for some time, but there was this death that happened and this rebirthing that come from that, and there was this deep sense of grace and this deep sense of peace, you know, placing the sword and the shield down on the ground. There was this sense of her no longer fighting herself, as if ultimately she had made peace with a deeper part of herself. And from that day on, she watched over her children's children, and she taught them how to live with the land. And that is how she spent the rest of her days, often sitting in the sunshine when it was, and watching her children's children grow. Now, I really do feel there's so much we can take from that story. There's so much that we can lean into, and there's so much that we can unravel and unpack. But you know, we move through cycles of time where I do really feel that we ultimately and collectively are going through a death and a rebirth process. But as we begin to awaken this spring, as we begin to rebirth this spring, what is coming with us is deeper wisdom that has flowed and coursed through our veins, that we just need to take a look in the mirror and this is something that we have worked with within our community, on and offline, beyond the hedge. We've worked with our community, and we've really looked at that ultimate, really, really important question of who am I? Who am I? And what is awakening in me, and what am I awakening into? You know, because within us is the memories of many, 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 many lifetimes, as if they are etched onto the soul. They are etched into the soul, and profoundly so. Really profoundly and deeply so. So, questions to really kind of, you know, nurture, and, you know, love to hear if you could see Freya, and how does that story relate to your life? You know, what does it stir up? What medicine does it begin to nudge or move or inspire? You know, we are living in a time where everything is calling forth for us to remember the wisdom that is coursed through our veins. You know, we've heard that saying, haven't we? You know, that person's an old soul. That person's an old soul. And I think that, you know, the oldest amongst us are here at this time for good reason. That's not by chance. That is not some coincidence. It's never by chance. It's always by design, because we are here to shape these times. We're here to rise into leadership. And I think the other bit that I'm going to leave you with is, think about Freya. She was so deeply alchemized from fighting to having this deeper insight, this deeper knowing, this deeper lot of wisdom that alchemized her. I mean, her hair went from blonde to white. She had shifted deeply into becoming an elder. And the thing is, there is going to be a time where we become ancestors. So what type of ancestors are we becoming? And we live in a time where there are generations that have no stories. I think going forwards that's going to change, because I think the world around us is, we're living in really, really, really huge times. We're living in really challenging times too. And challenging times bring about story. You know, it's like the diamonds. You know, diamonds are born and birthed under pressure. Think about Freya and her story. So lots to think about, lots to unpack and unravel. For those of you that are a part of our Beyond the Hedge, next week we are going to be unpacking a video that is going to be all about meeting your council of elders. It is going to be a journey to meet your council of elders. I'm going to weave in some techniques to show you how you can begin to meet and communicate with your council of elders. In the meantime, as always, you beautiful, beautiful people, sending you all so much love, and keep shining, and we will speak really, really soon. Take care, lots of love. Bye guys, bye.